Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's brief ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We're going to take a look at the long-range forecast first, but a quick reminder, these long-range forecasts are very sensitive to initial conditions as well as ocean temperatures, which are a part of the initial conditions. So let's start off and take a look at what we've got. As of last week, we have about 72% of the country in some form of drought, and you can see that a lot of that drought is anchored in the southern plains and throughout the mountains in the west, although we've seen improvement throughout winter despite how dry January was. Second component of this is going to be soil moisture values. Again, we've got very low values that stretch throughout parts of the plains, getting into the western Corn Belt here into northern Illinois, Wisconsin, and stretching all the way here into southern Ontario. There is some snow on the ground in these areas that will eventually melt. In fact, let's go take a quick look at that. So this will be getting into the soil as that melts, but just take note of how much ground here in parts of the northern plains getting back here into the Canadian Prairie, the southern Canadian Prairie, where we don't have the snow on the ground. Despite the extremely dry month of January, we're still doing quite well on snowpack compared to a year ago. But if we don't have good moisture return at some point in February, March, or April, we don't have enough really here to sustain us through the upcoming year. And that's because this past January was one of the driest on record for California, Nevada, and you can see the drier swaths in this part of the plains in the upper Midwest. Now we wrap all this together and start to think about the main controls on the long-range forecast, and so we're going to go straight to the other piece of this, which is ocean temperatures. We've got to be watching three areas right now, in my opinion. Okay, one is going to be our fading La Nina. Two is going to be the colder water that's still in place here along the coast of North America. That's part of what we call the negative phase of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. And then the third area I'm going to be watching is everywhere that the MJO traverses, which is basically from Africa all the way out here over into the Central Pacific. Now let's talk about that PDO. So the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, just take a look at this time series going back to the 1850s. If we come most recently here, we can see that from about 2008 through about 2013, the PDO was negative. We had, of course, back-to-back La Ninas in there. Then we had, during our El Nino years, like 14, 15, 16, 17, we also had a positive PDO. Well, we're back down here again. We've had two back-to-back La Nina events, the second of which is fading. Now, we know something about this. Historically, in February to March, we tend to be quite active in the upper Midwest, quite active throughout the Ohio River Valley in terms of getting above average precipitation. The bad part about this is there is no strong subtropical component of the jet stream. So much of the southwest, including California, tends to stay drier, and so does the southern and high plains and through this area. The PDO is a major factor in late winter, early spring for drought development here. But later on in the year, as we think again, this is all about these colder ocean temperatures right into this area. Should this deepen and extend into this direction, one of the biggest concerns is going to be what it does to the summer pattern. Because historically, the summer pattern tends to be quite dry in through this area due to that PDO, negative PDO signal. What it does is it dips a trough over the west, and we get ridging here, stagnant flow, and tends to be quite dry with just isolated storms being the main kind of component of precipitation. So we're going to watch that very, very carefully in the coming weeks and months. Now, ocean temperature patterns as forecast by the European model show us a fading La Nina. See this? This is going to March, now April, into May, June, July, and August. I'll go ahead and give you the 7-month outlook here. What we do see by summer is warmer ocean temperatures showing up here, which indicates El Nino-like behavior in the trade winds. The La Nina fades south, and there's still some sense of cooler water right here along the coast of North America over toward Hawaii. But compared to previous runs, this is now not as cold, and that's critical for the upcoming summer forecast for the Midwest, which we're going to look at, or not just the Midwest, but the whole of the U.S. here in just a few moments. La Nina, though, just want to show you that the latest ensemble forecast from the European continues to fade through spring to INSO-neutral conditions by the time we get into late spring, and about a quarter of the ensemble members pull this into El Nino by the time we get out into midsummer this upcoming summer. All right, so what do we have? Let's go look at it from the European model. This again was just updated over the weekend. March, April, and May. One of the key factors, we're going to look at this again in a few moments here, is the better onshore flow in the Pacific Northwest from Northern California into Oregon and Washington. Now this is all going to hinge on getting the ridge to back up over to the Aleutian Islands. It's not done that in January and early February, but it could. We'll take a look at how. we will not get a strong subtropical component of the jet stream, which leaves this area drier, and unfortunately, same thing for the southern plains. Systems that roll into the northwest will dive like this and then eject here, and as a consequence, this is going to go over active in this region. Watch what happens, though, as we go from into March, April, May, into April, May, June, May, June, July, and then let's just keep going out there, June, July, August. The models are quite aggressive on expanding the region that is already dry farther to the north and east. Now you got to look at this and say, all right, why are they doing it? Because they started with dry conditions here. They started with a negative PDO signal. They started with La Nina. So that's what they're going to have. I was explaining this to somebody the other day. It's like playing a game of pin the tail on the donkey. You spin the kid around, you push him in a direction. He's going to go in the direction you push him. And that's what the models are doing. They're following that direction. Now that's an active southwest monsoon, by the way. That's active in the east. But we got to ask the questions. Is this really going to be how summer's going to pan out? Now, there's another component to this. We have another model, another suite of models, the National Multi-Model Ensemble we can consult. And their precipitation forecast for April, May, and June, well, it also has drier conditions here. Again, it was started with that, so they perpetuated. We're wetter in this area. Well, let's go back and take a look at the next 3 months following that. How about out here? This would be the May, June, July. The model, again, quite aggressive, being drier east of the Mississippi River, including the Mississippi River Valley, the southern plains getting back into the northwest. Now I look at all of that and I say, well, all right, I saw the same thing in the forecast a year ago. We had last February drought, extensive drought across the west. It was deeper here last year than it is now. But we have more drought that's in the southern plains. The drought that's in the northern plains was worse a year ago because of snowpack issues. But this is what we had in the forecast. I have it still from a year ago. We had the La Nina sinking south into the southern hemisphere, and there was a forecast for some cooler water in this area. And guess what the models did with that? They painted a picture that was quite dry throughout the midsection of the country, extending into the eastern Corn Belt. That's what the European did for May, June, and July. The NMME did something similar. And then what I want to show you is the result. You see, this was last May, June, and July on precip records. And the models were just way too dry in this area, in the eastern Corn Belt, in the eastern Great Lakes and Northeast. But you could say they got it better for the northern plains in the Northwest. They really did a terrible job here through the Canadian Prairie, though, where the models were calling for near average to even wetter than average conditions. And that certainly never materialized. So I just think about all that, try to stitch together that story for us as we kind of go forward here. Now, thinking about that again, I want to come back to this very dry conditions we have over parts of the western United States. And I'm just going to show you what got us there. We've seen this last week. Remember, there's that ridge that blocked the flow, sending it right over the top and sliding down into the Midwest. Now, when the PDO is negative in February and March, it's one signal that can help push that ridge west, and we need that to occur. That could help revive some better moisture coming into the western part of the United States. There's another part to this too. For the first time in weeks, we've got the MJO coming out into the Indian Ocean. It's really in phase 3 right now. It's expected to move to phase 4 and phase 5. Now, why that's important is both 3, 4, and 5, all of those phases favor ridging here and ridging there. So that means the jet stream comes around, dips, and then runs up like this. That's a better signal, given that we don't have a subtropical component of the jet stream. That's a better signal that we can get to help revive some of the moisture in the west, give us a very active mid-south, midwest pattern. So when we think about all of that, we think about what it would take to really revive the west and the likelihood of it. You see, our miracle marches, which I've got listed off here in these years, we just dug a deep trough here, and that ridge was firmly planted of evolution islands. That's what you got to do. You got to get it back there. So the flow did like that. I don't think we're going to see that this year. I think if anything, this trough will likely either be here or maybe farther back to the west and north here, not dipping down just off the Oregon and California coast. That would be what we would need to completely cure the drought across the western states. What we end up getting is this. This is the new forecast for February 25th to March 25th. And what it favors is a flattening of the ridge, flow probably coming in like this, and then ejecting, keeping this whole area quite above average on precipitation. The models backed off on how dry it was in California, but again, I'll make the statement, with no subtropical jet, we won't get a wet signal for California. Where could the dividing line be? Probably the Klamath Mountains, northern Sacramento Valley, then getting into the northwest, better chances of having more moisture in the month of March. That's not a miracle March, but it's not a terrible March as we look forward here. Southern Plains, drier. It's too dry down here along the Gulf Coast. The model's been consistently too dry in that area. So that's my long range for you. Let's now take this over to a near range forecast, and I'll show you the problem that we've got, why it's so dry in the near term. Strong flow coming off of Japan, but it splits. See that? It's that split in the west that gives us northwest flow and drier conditions. We get very windy and dry conditions across the northern plains, but it's nice to be able to look at an all hazards weather map and not see it just covered with hundreds of different hazards, instead to see a little bit more of a less active week. And this is what we're going to get. On that split flow, clippers are going to come through here, but we're going to be relatively dry all the way through Valentine's Day across much of the rest of the country. We'll talk in a moment about some snow coming in on the front range of the Rockies, but the west is going to continue to stay dry in that split flow. Now today I'm only going to use the European model. My main reasoning for that is when we see the skill scores of the models lately, the European's been more consistent in its performance than the GFS, which has at times done quite terrible. So when we look out there, this is what we've got, okay? Playing through the day on Tuesday, we have one system rolling up into the northeast, bringing in some snow. That was why there was winter weather advisories for parts of New Hampshire and Maine. But we have a clipper that came out of the Canadian Prairie. It's going to go right over the Great Lakes right there by Wednesday. So we're going to see some light snow all around that clipper moving through. Now by Thursday, another clipper comes out. And what I want to point out here is that each of these tends to miss the southern Canadian Prairie of Saskatchewan and Alberta, a place that needs more moisture. This one goes right here into Lake Superior, bringing some snow to the upper Midwest, some rain across the Midwest and through here, and a shot at some cold air behind it. But what we want to pay attention to after that is the Arctic high that comes in on Saturday. It's going to push some upslope flow here on the Rockies, so we could get some snow right into this area late this week and early over the weekend. Now it's after that that the pattern gets quite, well, just interesting in my perspective. You do kind of see something happen over the southeast by Sunday, but as we play this on out into Monday and Tuesday, what I'm going to be watching is for the placement of this high pressure cell over North Carolina. You know how this works, right? If the high sits right in through here, the flow comes around it, opens up the Gulf, and if there's a trough that digs in, we develop low pressure here, and the operational models are taking that and trying to make some sort of a system after Valentine's Day. Now, we don't know what this is going to look like. It's too far out there, but there's the chance for that system to eventually form. So before it gets here, though, our heaviest snow corridor runs right in through here. So good lake effect snow. First system exits New England right there. But after that, it's right in through this corridor with that little bit of snow we showed you a moment ago coming through the front range. From there, by the time we get to the 16th, highly amplified pattern west. See the ridge? There's the trough that we're going to watch come out of the southern plains, possibly giving us that midweek or late week next week winter system that comes through. But going out to the 18th, 19th, and 20th, what I see and what I hope for is this ridge to finally get to the west. It has failed to do that despite any model forecast in January and early February. So we have to call it into question if it'll occur. But if it does, we will start to see the dryness in the west erode away. We'll go back toward normal precipitation. But do pay attention here. This is all coming from that system coming out maybe the 15th, 16th, 17th. That's next week. One thing I can tell you is we do not have a major polar vortex disruption. Polar vortex is strong and steady sitting over Greenland, whereas a year ago, right now on this date, it was split into two pieces and it was just delivering that brutally Arctic air all the way down to the Gulf Coast. What do we have now? Well, let's just take it back. That was Monday's high temperatures. Let's blow that up for you. Here's Tuesday, getting into Wednesday and Thursday. I mean, it's just a very mild week across much of the United States. When the shots of cooler air come in, that's just all they are, just a little bit cooler than the climatological average, but the warmth in the plains. This is Friday the 11th, getting into Saturday. Remember that cool shot of air coming through behind that Arctic high? That's it. And then we get into Sunday. The west is warm. The plains are going to be quite warm, and we just want to know how long is it going to stay that way. It will stay that way until the ridge moves toward the Aleutian Islands. So day 5 through 10, cooler east, warmer west. This is day 10 through 15. Sorry, let's shrink that up for you. Day 10 through 15. Oh, I'm sorry. There's day 10 through 15. We're going to continue to see the more mild conditions favoring here. It's after this point that I think I see the forecast adjusting to the MJO behavior, maybe the PDO behavior, getting that ridge to the west, which could really shift things around for the end of February, the beginning of March. I'll keep analyzing and report back to you on Thursday, okay? Appreciate your attention. Thanks.